And welcome aboard to the Baseball Talk Radio Show, brought to you by fine listeners like you out there. Go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/baseball talk. We'd love to have you as a sponsor. Yes, we would. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest Baseball Talk Radio Show, brought to you by you, the listeners, with our fabulous Patreon page. Gary, what a great introduction there with some baseball organ music.
Yeah, we're getting close, Rich, and pretty soon, we'll be hearing it for real at the ballpark, and it'll be chilly the first couple of weeks, but we'll be there, and it'll be fun to get back to the ballpark and get the season underway. But first, we got to go through this long spring training.
Yes, we do, and it won't be long. As you said, we'll be seeing some spring training games and that great baseball organ music. And I had a couple pieces of music I played in my Phillies Talk podcast in the last couple shows, and it really went over big. A lot of listeners of podcasts love that baseball organ music, so I hope everyone enjoyed that out there. And yeah, as you said, Gary, we'll be out to the ballpark soon. Any plans for opening day yet?
Not opening day, but I do have tickets. I'm going like a co-sponsoring an event on the second game. So I'll be going to the second game of the season at Citi Field, and it's a night game, and I'm expecting it to be rather on the chilly side. But, we did it last year, had about 20 people go. And I do it in connection with the Brooklyn baseball banter team and the Boardwalk Battalion of the Brooklyn Cyclones. And we went last year and had a fun time. And that was a couple of weeks later in the end of April, and it was cold that night too. But we're going to try it second game of the season and see how it is, and should be a good time.
Yes, it should. I know I took part in a few opening days, and there's a lot of pomp and circumstance to opening day with baseball. A lot of fans come out there year after year for that first game, and really get a lot of winter rust off of their chest and all. So I'll have to see if I'll be going to opening day today. But yeah, like you said, any time in the first week is a great time to go, especially those first couple days. I think they give stuff away like T-shirts and things, welcome you back with some calendars and all. So it should be a great time.
Yeah, I went for a while there. I was going every year opening day, and then, you get older and the bones don't want to go in the cold as much. So started going later in the year and stuff. But like I said, this is a special thing, and I was asked to be a part of it. And like I said, it's the second game of the season, so we'll see. But maybe this year I'll get a little smarter. I'll bring some hand warmers with me, and maybe stick a blanket in the old backpack, so I can keep the knees and the legs covered and warm. Because last year it was, and I was dressed, but it still got cold because you're not moving around, and you're kind of just sitting there. And when the wind starts whipping in, and it was cold, but again, we had a great time. And this year I got to find out about the clubs. I think you can go into one of the indoor clubs and So maybe it'd be a good idea to go in and warm up there. Hopefully, it'll be a nice warm spring, and it'll be 80 degrees that day and about 60 degrees at night, and we won't be freezing.
Yes, that sounds like a plan. Just wanted to wish you also a happy birthday. It was your birthday yesterday, and so glad that you had a great time and worked through the bad back. But glad you had a great time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very nice of you to say that. And yeah, it was my birthday. I won't say how many, uh, but it's more than a dozen and less than 100. So I guess we're in pretty good shape that way.
Yeah, we had some arbitration rulings come up in the last week or so, and one kind of stuck in your craw a little bit.
Yeah, it stuck not because of who it was or what happened. It's just the whole arbitration thing. And I think what this did to me, it kind of highlighted the whole problem with the whole process. It was actually with the New York Yankees and Dylan Betances, their fine young relief pitcher, and he lost his bid in the arbitration. And okay, that happens all the time. But then the vice president, I think he is of the Yankees, Randy Levine, who has a habit of being controversial in New York, he went and had a conference call and really kind of demeaned the Dylan Betances and his agent and said he's a good kid, but he's being used. He's a victim. He's being used by his agent, and he asked for an enormous amount of money. And he's an eighth inning guy. He's not a closer. And just when it was just a nasty thing, and the agent answered, of course, and said that it was ridiculous. And Dylan Betances answered, and that's the thing that really got to me because listening to his press conference, you could hear in his voice the anger, but he was very calm about it. But you could hear a player that was ticked off. And honestly, I don't blame him. I believe he's right in being ticked off. And some of the things he said was, he mentioned the fact that he went in there for an hour and a half and they badmouthed him for an hour and a half, and then went on to say about how they say he's not a closer, and he's asking if this was closer money and that kind of thing. He asked for $5 million. They only wanted to pay him $3 million, and they won. He wasn't so upset with losing. I think it was the aftermath of it, and it just hit home to me about how crazy this arbitration whole system is, and how it can work against teamwork and players. And he made a comment, and that stuck to me as well. He said, first off, it's not up to him to be a closer or not. I mean, what's he going to do? Go and say, no, I don't want to be a closer? He did do some closing for them. And then they went out and they got Chapman. And first they got out Andrew Miller, and they shoved him to the eighth inning. And then they went out last year and got Chapman, and they had Miller, and they had Betances, and they shoved him to the seventh inning. Now, whose fault is that he's not a closer? They said he didn't have the statistics. Well, he's got great statistics. He just don't have the save statistic. And I think that's another thing that is screwing up the game of baseball, and that's the sabermetrics. So it's the sabermetrics and the arbitration where they're using these statistics so thoroughly, and they're totally ignoring the job that the other guys are doing. And it just causes hard feelings, and it just left a sour taste in my mouth. And I'm not a Yankee fan, everybody knows that, but this particular situation really hit home about the whole arbitration process and left a sour taste in my mouth. And I think baseball, they're so worried. To me, Manfred is worried about the stupidest little things, and we discussed some of this last time. About the pitch clock, which I understand now that they're getting away, they're eliminating, and now the starting the guy on second and extra inning, all these stupid little ideas.
Mm-hmm.
When he should be worried about these kind of things. These are the things that can ruin the game from within. And it also brings into question about unions and agents and all of that. Now, I know the way it used to be was almost like slavery, where they could sign a guy and you were at the dictates of the club back in the 50s and the 60s. But I think the pendulum is swung so far the other way now, and I don't think it's totally good of the game. And I don't know what the answer is, but maybe the answer is to just they have to work out a system, of course, with the union, but maybe there's got to be some kind of system where the first 3 years you get a 25% raise every year or something like that. But this arbitration thing, it's really ridiculous because, let's say, for instance, you've made $1.5 million 1 year, and you stink up the next year, and you go to arbitration, and you ask for 6 million, and the teams, because the formula that they figure, they're only saying they'll only pay you 2.5 million, and you lose. Well, but you're still making $1 million more that you did the year before, and you stunk the joint up. So I think it's a stupid system. I think it brings in a lot of hard feelings, and down the road that could not be good for any team. And again, getting back to Betances, he made the statement. He said, I pitched in multiple innings. They wanted me to come in the 6th inning to get somebody out, and then I pitched the 7th inning or whatever, 7th and 8th or whatever. And he goes, maybe I should just come in for a clean inning then in the 8th inning and just say, well, I'm an 8th inning guy. That's what you're paying me for. You're paying me to be an 8th inning guy. So I'm not going to come in a tough situation. I'm going to come in clean in the 8th inning. And he didn't say he was going to do that, and I doubt he would. But he brings up a great point. When do we get to that point where a closer is going to say, no, I only pitched the 9th inning. I can't come in the 8th. Or a setup guy says that, I can't come in the 7th inning. I'm an 8th inning guy. I mean, how structured are we going to get in this game? How specialized are we going to get where we're going to do this to relief pitches? Maybe we need to go back to the old days where, guys didn't have these set roles. They were relief pitchers. A guy got in trouble, start a pitcher, you brought in your best pitcher to try to get him out of it. And if he could still pitch, when Goose Gossage was pitching, that's what he's always complaining about, that when he pitched, he went 3 innings to get a save, and he pitched 3 innings. So I don't know if we've made it too easier for these relief pitchers now, especially the closers. I don't know what a save means anymore. Now we have a hold thing. But if you're going to go into negotiations and they're not going to respect the hold statistic, why bother having it? I just think we're getting so bogged down with war and all these other acronyms and all of these crazy statistics. And I don't think we're watching the game anymore and seeing the player. And I think a lot of fans do that too, Rich. I think a lot of fans don't watch a game anymore. They watch the box score, and it's all mathematics, and that's not what the game is all about.
And up, we'll take a look at what arbitration actually is, and that's 4 years, 3 through 6. Players can take their salary demands to an arbitration panel if they can't reach agreement with their team. If they have less than 3 full seasons of MLB service time, but are within the top 22% of players with more than 2 years of service time. So that's the rule to allow you to get to the arbitrator's table. But I think Betances really ended up the way a lot of younger stars do, and he's in that 3rd year. He's in his 1st year of arbitration eligibility. He's already made the major league minimum for a few seasons, and he wants to jump up. Everybody can get that. They want to make as much money as they can, obviously, but I don't think they can hand him the whole ball of wax in the first year. Now, granted, if he's as great as he thinks he is, maybe he should deserve a little bit more. But I think 9 times out of 10, the way they're weighing the weight of how important or how um, critical a player is to a team's success is the way they're awarding some of these deals. If you look at Chris Bryant, for example, I think he was in his first year of arbitration recently. But yeah, these guys are going to want a ton of money. And unfortunately, you just can't offload a ton of money every time with some of these players. And now, if Batanzas does good this year, then he writes his ticket. He's going to jump up. He's going to get that extra double his salary from 3 to probably 6 million, possibly. And I felt the same way with Ryan Howard when he came up with the Phillies. He was the same way. He had a couple good years, his first couple years, and yeah, he wanted the whole enchilada right off the bat. And eventually he did get the enchilada, but they had to wean him on it a little bit and, prove that you're not a fluke, so to speak.
Well, I don't think so. His so much was the money. I think to him it was the disrespect and the fact that they came out. He was willing to accept the arbitration process. He said that he was willing to. He knew it was going to be nasty, and he was willing to accept that. But then to come out and to get more nasty on him and his agent, that's what really ticked him off and brought him out. Uh, and I don't blame him for that because they didn't need to do that, the Yankees. But I think it brings up the whole problem with arbitration. And that is it can cause bad feelings because you go, and like he said, I always ask for the ball. I've taken the ball whenever they've asked me to take the ball, uh, and done my job. And then you go to an arbitration and they say, well, he hasn't been that good. He don't have the close. He don't have the saves. He don't have this. He don't have that. Well, he can't get the saves if he's not the closer. And I think that's where the problem comes in. And I don't know how you measure it, but I think they have to have some sort of, maybe they've got to give them a year earlier free agency and deal with it that way. I mean, I remember Mike Trout was not happy after his first 2 years, I think it was. And he was really ticked off, and they gave him a contract that stunk. I mean, and now he's since got a better contract. But I just think it's the kind of thing that I don't think it's good for the game because Patansis might be thinking now, well, I came up with this organization, but boy, when I get to a free agency, I'm going to get my butt out of here if this is the way they're going to treat people and treat me. And, eventually that stuff gets around the game, and then that could cause other problems, attracting free agents. Now, I'm not a Yankee fan, so I really don't care if it hurts them. But it's just the point that I think, to me, the whole arbitration thing, that's why the Mets have been very fortunate. Like, they have had, I think, one case since 2008. Ali Perez, I think it was 2008, took them to arbitration, and they had one this year, only one. And they lost that one this year, but they usually try to settle, which tells me they must be making a fair offer if these guys are settling with them. So it's I understand they can't pay him everything, and but in a case like this, why didn't the Yankees just said, okay, we'll give you 4 million, or we'll give you 3.5? Maybe he would have signed and not gone to arbitration. But I don't think it was the arbitration per se that ticked him off. I just think it was the press conference by the Yankees afterwards. And I heard somebody on the radio today call it, the Yankees shouldn't have. They spiked the football. In other words, they won the case and they were making sure everybody knew about it. But to me, it just brought up the problem with arbitration and the problem and the awarding a salary based on the sabermetrics and all of that. You can use the statistics, but you have to know if you watch this kid and he's going out there every day and stuff that you can't rip them completely. And there are ways to rip people nicely too. You don't have to be totally nasty and who knows what they did. In his words, though, he went for 90 minutes and they ripped him, and then they're telling him what a great guy he is. So it's not a good system. I don't think it's a good system for the fans because the fans don't really understand it, and it's just I think it's a mess, and I think again that Manfred should be looking at important things like this. I know he's not going to bother because they signed the agreement for the next 10 years or whatever it is. So he's not going to bother looking into this. But I just think they have to do something.
And I just checked into Chris Bryant. He's not eligible till next year, arbitration eligible. So I know a lot of fans will be watching that case as well. And I would think the Cubs are practically falling over themselves to want to sign him to a long term deal. But we'll have to see what happens in that. And as you said, Mike Trout, they all want a piece of the pie, and the pie gets bigger every year, it seems. Look at the Phillies. They had to offer a qualifying offer. That's strange in itself to me, to try to keep a guy that they sort of wanted to get rid of, but they had to offer him a huge amount if he would come back and stay and forego any possible contract that he could go out and search for anyway. That to me is, here's a blank check. We're going to write a number on it. You go out and see if you can beat it. But if you can't, you're going to get this big over payday for yourself.
Well, I think the qualifying offer is really a crapshoot. The main reason they do it is if it gets turned down, they get a draft pick in the first round or compensatory draft pick. So, or a supplementary, whatever they call it. So that's really why a team would do that. But like you say, sometimes because for years their players wouldn't take it. Now they're taking it. And I just it's kind of a silly thing as it is as well because why should you lose a player? Like I understand you're losing a player, but then you're getting another draft pick. It should be if I'm if I have a business and I have a good employee and my competitor offers him more money, I don't get anything back. You should just lose the guy and not have to make him an offer to make him. You can make him an offer to stay. I would rather see that gone away with too, and just have a thing like a first right of refusal that you have a right to match before they can sign with another team. I mean, that would seem fair. Somebody offered you X amount of money, you'd have to go and say, hey, look, they're offering me $45 million for 3 years. Can you match that? They say no. Okay. But yeah, I mean, the Mets, if you listen to Mets musings, I've been on I haven't had a show in a while because I've been ill and bad back and all. I'll have to do one. But anybody who knows me knows the Jay Bruce deal to me was a total disaster. Now it's costing them more money because now they're thinking of signing Neil Walker, the second baseman, for a 3-year extension because they don't have a second baseman in the system, a pure second baseman. And this is all the result of the Jay Bruce trade because they had a replacement there, but they traded him to Cincinnati for Jay Bruce. So now, instead of costing them the $30 million because they had to sign Neil Walker back this year, qualifying offer plus pay Bruce. That's the third. That's where I get the 30 from. Now it might cost them another $40 million to hold on to Neil Walker for 3 years. So this is an expensive proposition. This whole stupid Jay Bruce trade, and I'll probably tune in to the next Mets musings, if you will, and you'll hear me really go off on that. But But I just thought this really brought about the whole arbitration, the problem with it, and what it can cause down the road, and especially if you go more than once to it. And I just don't like it.
And I think you brought out an interesting point. A lot of these contracts and hires are a gamble to a certain extent. Had Bruce performed well, excelled, and gone beyond expectation, it would have been a good deal for him. So there's always a double-edged sword to contracts and baseball, but we're so glad they're back, and all the baseball teams are back on the diamond down in spring training, whether it be Arizona or Florida. And just this past week, Gary, I got my notification from MLB.TV. They're having their premium package offered again this year, and a very reasonable $112.99.
Hmm.
Not bad for 2,430 games.
And you watch every one of them, right, Rich?
I try to tune in as much as I can, especially with that because you have the DVR function where you can go back a couple days and watch some innings or watch the highlights. You can roll through a game usually in 5 or 6, 7 minutes in the morning if you should happen to be out or go to sleep early that night and not watch the game. You can always watch a recap, which is very interesting. But this year as well, you're going to be able to watch the World Baseball Classic on live, actually, in the United States only. They're going to broadcast that and over 300 spring training games. So seems like every year this MLB.TV sort of picks up its game a little bit.
Well, folks, I can see in a couple of weeks, Rich will be very bleary eyed from watching only spring training games and staying up till all hours of the night to see Israel versus South Korea or whoever they're going to play, or God knows who's playing. Uh, at the World Baseball Classic. So we'll look for that, Rich, and you can tell us all about it if you can stay awake during the show.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting time. Then again, I just love that MLB TV offering. Years ago, I remember before cable even got MLB Network, before that existed, and before cable offered the network as it does now with all the closed circuit games.
Mhm.
I went out and got a satellite dish because I wanted to see some of the West Coast games. So I had the satellite dish going for the West Coast games. I had my local area covered, and you got to get your baseball fix somewhere.
Oh boy, I know, and I'm waiting to see. I didn't get my renewal for MILB. I like that because I can get to see the Cyclones on the road when they're in a couple of spots. Not everybody is covered independently because it's such a low minor league system, but there's a couple, and I enjoyed that last year, and I watched the playoffs and everything else. It was fortunate because the teams in the finals both had the coverage, so you could watch. You could watch the one team, and then when they went to the other team's field, you could watch it. It's only a 3-game final, so. But that was fascinating, and I enjoyed that immensely, and got to watch some of the other Mets farm teams. So I'm waiting for that, and that's a little bit cheaper. I think I can do that. I don't know if I could do as many of the MLB games yet because I know what'll happen. I'll start watching them, and the next thing you know, it'll be 3 in the morning, and then say, "Oh boy, I got to get up for work the next day." So maybe I'll wait for that until I retire, and I can stay up all night watching West Coast games and commenting on them. So got a lot of things planned.
Good. You can always fill up that time. That's for sure. Uh, Watching baseball games and following different players. And as we said, spring training is underway. Won't be too long. They only take about 10 days before they start getting into the games here. It's shaking off that rust early. I wonder if many of our listeners will be going down to spring training. We heard from our great listener, Jack. He'll be down there, and hopefully he'll be able to maybe talk with us down there in spring training this year. Let us know what he sees down there, what's going on. Maybe we'll have him on as a special guest if he can arrange it. But yeah, it's going to be a great time, Gary. The warmth, we get the television coverage back here with the nice palm trees and sunshine and just
Yeah,
breezes. We're getting there.
we are getting there, and it's the other day when we had the snow, and I turned on, and they had a report about some of the players down there, and they're running around in the sunshine in shorts, and I'm thinking, geez, you lucky so and so's.
Doesn't get much better than that.
No, not at all, Rich.
Well, we'd like to invite you to follow us on Twitter. We're at Baseball Podcast, and MLB This Week actually is our Twitter name. So follow us there and follow us on Facebook. Just search out the podcast there on Facebook. You can follow us. You can get our updated listings on when we're going live. Like tonight, we're going live right on YouTube. So you could have been watching this live and sending your questions. And we do have a chat room open so we can take requests and questions and things like that. Follow us over on Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah, and don't forget to check out my show, Mets Musings, and Rich Shows, Phillies Talk, and many other fine shows at baseballtalkradio.com, the home of great baseball talk shows. And we've got lots of shows on that network. Boy, it's mostly every team covered, and there's even a Japanese team and a podcast and a fantasy league, and the baseball PhD is on there. Everything's covered on that network. So if you want to get more of a fix, check it out, baseballtalkradio.com.
Yes, indeed. And if you go to the website, check up on the top of the form, just new for this season here, while spring training going on, you can sign up for RoboForm. I know a lot of people out there have issues with their passwords. They have too many of them on the computer. You have 20 or 30 passwords. You need a password manager. And RoboForm is going to do that for you. It's going to be a great thing. I know you use a certain password manager as well, Gary. I prefer RoboForm, and you can click on the link there at the main page at baseballpodcast.net and baseballtalkradio.com and get a free trial membership to that RoboForm. So I want to invite everybody to go there as well.
That sounds great, Rich. I'll have to check that out myself. And Rich, I was talking yesterday, and somebody says hello to us and to the show and to all the people out there. A friend of ours, friend of the show, Mark Littell, who was on with his book, And on the Eighth Day, Guy Created Baseball. Had a conversation with him yesterday. He gave me a nice birthday wish, and I hit the wrong button on my thing, and the next thing I know, I was having a video chat with him. So he wanted to send his greetings to you and to all of our fans out there. And he's working on another book, so he may be back on the air with us.
Very cool. It'll be great to talk with him again, and giving a shout out right back to you, Mark. Thanks for the plug, and thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, nice guy.
All right. Well, I happened upon this article, and it's the power rankings as of the start of spring training. Now, I guess you could throw these teams around like some playing cards, basically, but I'm going to go through the top 11 teams as Bleacher Report had a blog post about the other day. And we'll start out at number 11, Gary. It's a team that you know very well. The New York Mets, they're saying, is the 11th team out of 30. Down to number 10, they actually have the Texas Rangers ranked right above the Mets. And at number 9, it's the St. Louis Cardinals, as we're going to be starting spring training here. Number 8, San Francisco Giants. Number 7, the Toronto Blue Jays. And number 6, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Number 5 is the Houston Astros, and they disappointed many last year, Gary.
Yeah, they certainly did, Rich. Winning the division or making the playoffs the year before, and then totally slipped. But they had a terrible first half, but a very strong second half. So they seem to be a team that's getting close.
And another team that's getting close over in the National League is the Nationals. In fact, they've won the division twice out of 3 years, but they just can't seem to get over the hump. I don't know if this is the year for them, but if any year they're going to do it, I think it might be this year. So,
Nope, not this year.
well, the Nationals are number 4. Down to number 3, it's the Boston Red Sox, according to this article. Again, use it loosely, but it's a good thing to read. Number 2, the Cleveland Indians.
Hmm.
We all know the number 1 team here to knock off the throne has to be the Chicago Cubs. So there's your top 11 teams, according to this one article at the start power rankings of 2017 spring training.
Yeah, more statistics, Rich. The fan graphs have come out with their projections on how many games teams are going to win, and it makes no sense at all to me how they do these things or why they bother. I mean, that's why they play the game. And if we went by statistics and everything like that, we'd have a different picture about everything. But I know a lot of Met fans weren't happy because they picked them to win 83 games with literally the same team that won 88 last year, I believe. So I don't know where they get their numbers from. I don't know how they figure these things. I don't know. I don't put a lot of faith in any of these preseason power rankings or projections and everything. That's I always get a kick out of like the Sports Illustrated when they pick like who knows what to win it all, and the Brewers are going to win next year, So I don't know where they get their ideas from, but let's play the games and see what happens at the end of the year.
Yep, you still have to watch the games, and as you said, that I think a lot of it's entertainment purposes. You know, Bill James, people like that, has made a living out of selling these books with their calculations, and this guy's worth more than this guy, and but you always have the wild card, as you said, Gary. You have to watch the games. There's going to be players that aren't on anybody's uh, cybermetrics pages that are sabermetrics that are going to be great, but they're going to turn up winning games for ball clubs. So that's the beauty part about the human game is it's still human. It's not a number. It's not something that you can squash down and compute, but it does have its following and it keeps fans interested. And that I'm happy about. At least, there's a big contingent of fans out there that are drawn to the game because of the numbers, like maybe we don't 100% agree with it. But they find solace in looking at some of these numbers, and it's sort of their magnet to the game, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And like I always say it has its place. I just think we put too much emphasis on it, and that's where my argument is. Stats have always had their place in the game, but now they've gotten to the extent whereas they want to, actually pick teams according to certain stats, and I'll say what I always say. I haven't seen a team. I don't believe there is a team that's won a world championship yet based solely on sabermetrics. And I don't think you can have it because there's too many little things in there that the sabermetrics can't measure. They can't measure heart. They can't measure determination. They can't measure passion. And it's that guy diving that extra inch to get a ball that could save the World Series or whatever. Guy running into the wall to save a game. I was watching the other day a Mets classic, and it happened to be when Johan Santana pitched a no hitter, and Mike Baxter ran into the wall and really kind of ruined his career, I guess. He separated his shoulder. He was a mess after, but he caught the ball, and that saved the no hitter. And I don't think you can't measure that hard on with the sabermetrics and that's what just my argument is. There is a thing again when we talked a couple of weeks ago about movies and stuff. The trouble with the curve, that's the key there. You can hear it. It's a different hearing. A good scout can hear a ball pop and can tell better than all the numbers in the world. And we've seen a lot of busts of guys that were number one draft picks that have failed. And because a lot of times, right, especially lately, they may have been going by the statistics instead of getting out there and watching these guys play. So it has its place, but it shouldn't be the overall factor.
And you can't measure the success or failure of something like a phrase of "you gotta believe." And of course, if you're not from the Northeast and the New York to Philadelphia area, you may not have been familiar with this story, but Gary and I certainly were. This past week or so, there was some Phillies photos that were of the clubhouse, I believe, with a picture of Tug McGraw and Ryan Howard, and the phrase in the middle was, quote unquote, "you gotta believe." And of course, that was a quote taken from Phillies reliever and also Mets reliever Tug McGraw over the years. That was his famous saying over the years, but it took a life of its own this past week, Gary.
Yes, it did, because the Phillies stole it from the Mets. The Mets had it in 1973 with a team that was struggling, and the story is that M. Donald Grant, who was the part owner or the high mucky muck president of the team, came into the clubhouse and gave this boring, rah rah speech and everything, and Tug McGraw just was not how shall we say, wasn't playing with a full deck of cards. He was a fun-loving guy, and he jumped up, and some believe that he said it wasn't, but some believed it was sarcastic, but he jumped up and he says, "You gotta believe," and it caught on, in New York City and through the Mets nation, and became the rallying cry. And that team, of course, won their division with the less than stellar record. They were 83 or 83 and 79 or 80 something or other, with nearly 500 team. And went on and defeated the Cincinnati Reds in the playoffs with the world famous slugfest between Pete Rose and Buddy Harrelson. There, they got into a fist fight in the game, and of course they went to the 7th game of the World Series against the mighty Oakland A's, and had Tom Seaver pitch the 6th game instead of the 7th. But I mean, if George Stone pitched instead of, but that's a whole argument Mets fans have argued since 1973. But anyway. The point is that the Phillies stole it. Not only did they steal Tug McGraw, they stole our saying now, and this means war. This is not right that they put our saying on their wall in Clearwater. Actually, right? I think it's in the spring training facility that they did this, but. I'm sorry, Rich. This is not right.
Well, I'll tell you, you Mets fans are the victim of fake news. You had the coverage from the New York Times and all these liberal rags throwing this around. This is Tug McGraw saying, not any team saying.
Oh, no.
It stayed with him. He was traded to the Phillies. When the Mets didn't want him anymore, it was the rally cry between the 1980 Phillies. I believe it was on the front of the uh, Philadelphia Daily News as well when the Phillies won the World Series. You gotta believe it's just something that came with Tug McGraw. It's really his, and it's inspiration for Phillies players and Phillies fans. And I think we can share it between the Mets and the
I
Phillies.
don't know. We're in the same division. It's going to be pretty tough to share that, and especially since we claim it first since 1973. So,
It's huge, that saying. You gotta believe.
well, then they should have put it that way. You got to believe, but it's you got to believe. YA, you got to believe. And they even stole that.
Well, it was not Mets property. I still say it was Tug McGraw. He had this mentality about him, as you said, a very likable guy. He got sick. He had brain cancer in Philadelphia. People were heartbroken. They really loved him in Philly. I know they loved him in New York as well, but I still think it's Tug McGraw's saying, and it can be shared. And don't read that fake news, Mets fans. It'll be okay.
Oh, goodness, goodness, goodness. The extent that we go to.
Yes, indeed. Well, we hope you enjoyed tonight's podcast and uh, look forward to bringing you many more as the season progresses. We'll be talking more about some games, I'm sure, in the next week or so as we make our plans to go to the stadiums and bring you back some of the color commentary of what we see and our guests, of course, as we line them up during the year. Gary, you have a great week.
And you do the same, Rich. And folks, especially you Met fans, send your angry emails to Rich, not to me.
Just remember, you got to believe.